What if I told you that just 50 years ago there was a new plane that could fly from London Heathrow to New York's JFK International Airport in under 4 hours? Under 4 hours? What are you on about? That's insane and strictly impossible. How can an aircraft today fly from London to New York in under 4 hours? Meanwhile, it takes about 8 hours with the most advanced jets imaginable today. Let me tell you, dear viewer, it was all thanks to the aircraft's ability to fly at the unbelievable speed of twice the speed of sound. Something that was originally used and developed in the military some decades prior. But what happened to it? Why do we not see this supersonic marvel of the skies flying today? Well, let me tell you a story. A story of how two rival nations collaborated to bring supersonic flight into commercial aviation, a collaboration that went on to create one of the most legendary aircraft that has ever taken to the skies. This is the story of the legendary aircraft, the Concorde supersonic airliner. The Concorde, as you see right next to me, was a supersonic aircraft that was designed to fly higher and faster than any commercial jet in history, having the ability to fly at twice the speed of sound, which is quite impressive for the time, while also having a maximum ceiling of 60,000 feet, which is roughly close to the edge of space, although the U-2 spy plane might say otherwise. The Concorde was seen to be the next great step in commercial aviation, created from those ideas who basically thought that the supersonic airliners were the future. For those who do not know, after the development of the de Havilland Comet in 1952, the Comet was basically the Concorde of its era, an aircraft that cut down travel times by half than piston engine aircraft, making way for the jet age that we know and love today to take off into the future. Engineers and scientists from the United States, Britain and France calculated if they could design and build an aircraft that can fly at 60,000 feet and fly at Mach 1 or even beyond, so towards Mach 2, they could significantly reduce travel times for flights to destinations across the Atlantic, Asia, Africa, Australia, etc. And thus the Concorde was born. Her story is as unique as she looks, from originally beginning as a race between the three nations to then evolve into one of the most successful joint Anglo-French aviation projects of all time. A project that paved the way for Concorde to take off and soar past the sound barrier and beyond. This is how they did it. For this story, we will need to go back to a time before the smartphone and before colour television. It's February of 1954. This bloke had a chat with this guy to form a committee to study the concept of a supersonic transport, also known as an SST. Then, in 1955, this guy demonstrated that the drag at supersonic speeds was strongly related to the span of the wing. That meant that there would be an imposing force, which is just drag, on the aircraft, making big aircraft like this one more difficult to fly at supersonic speeds. So the committee published their findings, concluding that the SST concept wasn't feasible. But all that changed when these two discovered the slender delta wing designs. This stretched Dorito shape was designed to have a smooth surface for the air to glide up and over the wings to generate lift while flying at Mach Jesus. Oh, and the shape and the name came from the character delta in the Greek alphabet. After that, in 1956, the Supersonic Transport Advisory Committee, also known as STAC, was formed to study the feasibility of the SST once again. This joint industry group recommended the UK to develop two supersonic airliners, one to fly at Mach 1.5 and the other at Mach 2, while carrying 100 to 120 passengers. They eventually changed it to create just one that could fly at Mach 2 due to development costs rising at the time. In 1962, the UK partnered up with France to develop the aircraft. The pair knew that developing such an aircraft would cost an estimate of £70 million, or 1.4 billion adjusted for inflation. They merged the cost and brought in experience in making supersonic aircraft, with Great Britain developing the engines and the cabin, while France built the wings and the main airframe. 3 years later, both countries began constructing two prototypes in 1965. Concorde 001 was built by Aeroplaza, formerly Sud Aviation, in France, and 002 was built by the British Aircraft Corporation in Bristol. After 8 years of research and design studies, a joint partnership and 3 years of construction, Concorde 001 took off in Toulouse, France for its first test flight on the 2nd of March 1969. Then, 1 month later, Concorde 002 took off from Flinton on the 9th of April of that year. Now that we know about how Concorde's design made this aircraft supersonic, let's have a look at what this aircraft next to me has under its hood. What propels this aircraft to supersonic speed? Let's depart here and let's have a look more closely. This aircraft behind me is powered by four Rolls-Royce Olympus Mark 610 engines. You might not know what they are, but I'll explain to you what they are while I build this thing behind me. The Rolls-Royce Olympus Mark 610 engines was originally designed and used in the Avro Vulcan strategic bomber. Yes, the bomber that sounded like this. These were upgraded to have reheat, or now better known as the afterburner. This upgraded its original output by 18%, but that came at a very high cost. When the afterburner was engaged, these four engines basically burn through a lot of fuel. How much exactly did these engines burn just to get to Mach 2 after takeoff? This aircraft burns through 100,000 litres of fuel. If you don't know how much that is, let me put this into perspective. 100,000 litres is enough to fill 175,000 pints of beer or 200,000 500ml bottles of Pepsi Max. That's a lot of Pepsi. I'm not joking, these engines literally chug down fuel like the average Friday night at the local pub. However, this aircraft doesn't burn all its fuel because it can sustain its Mach 2 speed when the afterburner is shut off. It's quite impressive, and this is normally called supercruising. Oh, looks like we're finished with the engines. Right, let's get these engines on, and we'll move on to the cockpit. This is going to get really interesting.
Okay, as you can see right now, we've just completed building two of the missing engines that were on the Concorde. So this is the right section. So as you can see here, you've got these two vents, which basically which are like the engine intakes. They go through that way, and they eventually come out this very hot exhaust, which will just go out that way. Let's get this attached, shall we? And now we can put on our missing engines. Our missing two engines.
As you can see from this image behind me, the aircraft is quite long and skinny. This was to make the aircraft as aerodynamic as possible to fly past the sound barrier and at 60,000 feet in altitude. This is also why the nose, which looks like this, looks like the tip of a .50 caliber bullet. It's great when flying at breakneck speeds, but when you are basically when you're basically up there in the cockpit, you're going to struggle to see the runway when landing and moving around the airport. This was thanks to the cockpit being 19 feet off the ground and the nose being 24 feet long, blocking anything below the cockpit windows. So if you're a pilot up there, you're not going to see a single thing, and landing will be basically either just guesswork or it's straight up impossible. Before we move on to what the engineers came up with to solve this, I'm going to quickly walk away out here and just enjoy the time that's behind me, and I'll get back and I'll be here once this is done. So I'll see you in a minute. So now we've got the cockpit fully assembled here. Let's have a look at what the engineers came up with to the visibility problem. They came up with this, the snoop droop mechanism. This was their solution to solving the visibility problem. The mechanism is quite simple. The visor, which is here, would go into the nose here, and then hydraulics will then push it down to this, which is 15 degrees. But yeah, on this model it's not modeled very well. But we could give them a benefit of doubt, because I'm pretty sure making available mechanism to push it down from 5 degrees to like 5 degrees, 10 degrees to 15 degrees would not be easy. So this is what we got right now. So this is their solution. They can now see directly downwards, so now they don't straight towards the runway when coming in at a high angle attack, like what we have here on the stand and what have you. So yeah, that's that. Alright, that's pretty cool. I wish I could continue more, since there is a lot more that I could talk about this aircraft, but unfortunately we need to move on. If you want to buy the Lego sets that you've just seen on screen, I'll leave a few links in the description down below. Lego did a really great job with this set. It's a really fun build, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is an aviation fan like myself, or as anyone who likes the aircraft. If you want to know more about the aircraft behind me in more technical detail, I highly recommend checking out The Insane Engineering of the Concorde by Real Engineering, and The Story of Concorde by Bright Sun Films on YouTube. I'll leave links to them in the description as well. Now let's talk about the event that brought Concorde to an early retirement, or the series event that brought this aircraft behind me to a very early retirement. Concorde was a plane that faced its challenges with politics, lawmakers and poor sales figures, but it continued to fly without any crashes throughout its 25 years of service. But all of that came crashing down in July of 2000. That record came to a tragic end. The date was the 25th of July 2000. It was a normal summer's day at Charles de Gaulle International Airport at the city of Paris. Starting like any other day, the airport was rammed with tourists and people going to and from their destinations. Scheduled for that afternoon was the 14:30 Air France Flight 4950 to John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. The aircraft for the flight was the iconic Concorde, operated by Air France. On the aircraft were 3 highly experienced pilots, 6 flight crew, and 100 passengers. For them, it was just going to be a normal routine flight to NYC. Little did any of them know that this flight was going to be their very last. While soaring down runway 28 right, Flight 4950 ran over some debris that was left from a plane that had taken off just 5 minutes prior. This debris, however, caused the right tyres to explode, throwing tyre fragments into the landing gear and puncturing the fully loaded fuel tank number 5, causing a fuel leak, which then ignited into a trail of flames. This is where this photo was taken shortly after takeoff. This fire led to the plane crashing into a nearby hotel, killing all 109 people on board, while also tragically killing 4 additional ground crew in the process, killing 113 people in total. After the crash, all 13 remaining Concordes from both airlines were grounded while the crash was investigated. The Concorde's future looked bleak, but it became one of 2 events that sealed Concorde's future. The second event didn't involve the Concorde as such, but it was the final nail in her coffin. The event was the attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the crash of United Airlines Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania on September the 11th, 2001. Concorde had just came back into service around that time. But after the attacks, public perspective on air travel declined, which led to the industry collapsing overnight. With low passenger numbers and low amount of income coming in, many of them feared the worst. The next year saw Concorde struggle gaining back the numbers that it once saw before the Paris crash, combined with rising maintenance costs and the Concorde's poor fuel economy. In April of 2003, Air France and British Airways announced that the Concorde was going to be retired on the 24th of October 2003.
So we really appreciate, thank you very much indeed. We couldn't have done any of this without the support of all of our friends and colleagues in the USA, particularly in ATC in the USA, who've been so helpful and supportive. We really do appreciate it.
Speedbird 2, thank you for those words, and contact New York Center 128th Street. Cheerio.
128th Street, Speedbird Concorde 2. Have a nice day.
If you want to know more about the events that unfolded that caused the crash and why the Concorde retired so early into its life, I highly recommend checking out the video, What Actually Happened to Concorde by Real Engineering. He goes into the technical aspects of how the crash happened, from the debris that caused the fuel leak, and how the fire brought the Concorde down to a fiery grave. Another one I would like to mention is Mentor Pilot's video, Crash That Killed the Concorde. He goes into great detail on the chain of events that led to the fatal crash, from the moment that the aircraft started taxiing to the moment where it crashed and what the investigation found. I'll leave a link to all them videos in the description if you want to check them out. It's been 22.5 years since Concorde retired in 2003, but we still remember her today, especially today, because we haven't seen the same amount of innovation in the aviation industry since she emerged in 1969. Sure, new aircraft today are more efficient, more profitable, but we haven't seen anything that has rivaled the speed of Concorde today, especially in the commercial space. Long after Concorde retired, she left behind a legacy that has become a symbol of supersonic flight. 34 years of bad economics, low profitability and political restrictions, and a deadly crash. She managed to set multiple world records in her lifetime, which made her famous. One of her most iconic flights was when she raced against the moon. Yeah, the moon. In 1973, a total solar eclipse was scheduled to go over Africa that year. Scientists wanted to study the eclipse, so they strapped in scientific equipment and special windows on the roof of the fuselage and took off to begin the hunt. They arrived about a minute late, but it was just enough. They flew under the moon for 74 minutes. This broke the world record for the longest observation of a solar eclipse at the time. Another one was the world's fastest transatlantic flight from New York to London, with a flight time of 2 hours and 52 minutes in 1992. The Concorde was way of its time. She brought in supersonic travel and showcased that it was even possible, and also advanced avionics and fly-by-wire systems, which are now being used today by Airbus in nearly all of their aircraft today. Concorde came at the right place, but unfortunately at the wrong time, with the oil crisis in the 1970s, which brought fuel prices really high, and her efficiency kind of brought it to their end. Even though that she don't fly anymore, her legacy still lives on. But will we see another one in the future? As a matter of fact, we could be seeing another one very, very soon. NASA and Lockheed Martin have been working very closely together on the X-59, which looks like this. This aircraft basically is designed and is built to fly supersonic, but also make the sonic booms, which made Concorde really restricted at the time and still is to now if it should decide to take off. So it's made it really quieter, and tests that have been going on show that it's been quite well. And also you've got another company, Boom Overture. This aircraft behind me, which is their concept, they expect to have this thing in service around 2029. So give it about 3 years from now. With all that being said, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching this mini documentary on Concorde. This video has taken a very long time to make. As you can see, if you want to see a more uncut version, let me know in the comments down below. I might be able to revisit this in university, but we'll see from that. Thank you all so much for staying to the end. This has been James Dell from Dell Productions, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.